Swishing podcast, episode number 24. It's Eddie, flying solo. No reliable, dependable, trustworthy second host, so it's just me. First podcast since the World Series, so I thought it'd be a perfect time to do the state of the New York sports. And I'll get right into the first team, which is the Mets. The Mets, who I picked to win in 5 games, and they lost in 5 games to the Royals. I did not see that one coming. I thought the four horsemen, Matz, DeGrom, Syndergaard, Harvey, they would lead them to the promised land, and Terry Collins and such would have a World Series ring first since '86, and I was dead wrong. And I'll eat my plate of crow. You could, I've been money good on a lot of my predictions. NHL last year, a lot of NBA stuff, most of my NFL picks. I guess besides my Super Bowl picks, those are way off. But I was wrong on this. Everything that I thought would happen did not happen. And I'm not going to get into what transpired because you've heard it 1,000 times if you especially live in the New York area. I'm not going to break it down. Royals with the whole contact thing. They don't strike out. Timely hitting. Only one home run in the series was Alex Gordon off of Familia in game 1 to bring it into the extra innings. So long ago, I can't even remember. And the Mets on the flip side, the bats were cold. The pitching was good, but not Madison Bumgarner good. And think about what he did: 1 run in 21 innings last year. It's incredible. It's incredible to pitch 21 innings in a World Series, one guy alone, and you have only 1 run. And the Mets pitchers were good, like I said, but not as good as Mad Bum. And it gets you a World Series loss. So the problem is now where do you go from here? Are the Mets the favorites to win the NL East? I'd say no. Still has to be the Nationals. I don't agree with the Dusty Baker move, but they have the talent, and the Mets still have a couple question marks. They re-signed Terry Collins, who makes less money than Dusty Baker, which is absurd. Bud Black turned down the manager job for the Nationals because it wasn't enough, which was still more than Terry Collins makes. Don Mattingly was fired from L.A. hard and for the Marlins, and makes more than Terry Collins, who brought the team to the World Series. I'm not sure what the hate is with Terry Collins here. I mean, his decisions are questionable most of the time, some of the time on the field. Fact of the matter is, you got your team to the World Series, and he's really well liked, and I think that's important in the baseball clubhouse. I think a coach that's probably outside of football, I think it's the most important sport to have a coach. You're a player's coach, so I think he deserves a little bit more, but making 50% raise from his salary last year, and he has to now lead a team who could be missing Cespedes, who could be missing Murphy, who might trade a pitcher. So that's what you're looking at for the Mets going into next year. Darno can't throw. Duda can't throw. A lot of defensive woes. So what do you do? Today the Mets offered Dylan Murphy the $15.8 million qualifying offer. He's going to reject that. He's going to go and test the market. I said last podcast that they should go and sign both. This is, of course, before they lost the World Series in 5 games. So obviously the whole sentiment changed. The narrative changes of what direction do you go in. I feel like a lot of fans weren't really happy with Cespedes' performance and his antics, and he's not really a team guy, that's why he was moved from Oakland and the Red Sox and Detroit to the Mets again. Now he'll be on his 15 probably, and not so many years. His bat went cold. His defensive play, kicking the ball out there. I guess he doesn't fit in the team mentality a lot of people like. I thought he was flashy enough for New York. He could have fit in. I know Joe said that last podcast that he thought that Cespedes fit in there, and it was fun while it lasted. The whole Yo knows baseball, and he was 14 home runs in the stretch he had, and down August and September. It was just he was the turning point of the season. The whole Wilmer Flores crying, not getting Gomez, getting Cespedes, and it's just really funny how the narrative changed from he's the savior to a guy they don't even want. Who the reports coming out, there's all different reports. They're varying from no interest to moderate interest to they'll give him an offer. So we'll see. I don't think he'll be back in the blue and orange. That's not really going out on a limb here. It's almost close to 100%. He won't be on the Mets next year. But that's when you lose the World Series in the fashion they did, that's just what happens. And on a bigger scale, Dylan Murphy had the best playoffs, arguably since, I mean, the record he broke was it Lou Gehrig's or Jordan Maggio's, one of those, a legend, a baseball legend. If Murphy did this back in the black and white days in the 40s, I think it'd be in baseball lore. It would be one of those mythical old-time stories that you tell your grandkids and generation. He does it today, and everyone forgets about it because he makes 2 errors, which cost him games. His bat went cold, which I saw coming from a mile away because he knew he was not going to keep that up. And now he might not be a Met. The difference with him is he's been a Met, and I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt to stay with the team. He is on the wrong side of 30, but he's a good team guy. He's going to give you 280 at the plate. That's going to come. Obviously he cannot field any position, but he could play second. He could play third if you have to. And with the way David Wright's been playing, might not be a terrible decision. He could play first. He came to the league as an outfielder, I believe, a corner outfielder. Cannot play that anymore, just doesn't have the power to. But there's different. It makes more sense for him to be in the AL. He could probably play DH, but again, not enough power, depending on what you want your DH to be, where to hit in the lineup. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him. I think that he will stay in New York. I think that they'll give him this qualifying offer. He'll deny it, but they'll give him a deal. I think that the team has to realize you were this close to winning, and the probability of winning the games, I believe, was like high 80s, like 86, 88% of winning, then 94, and then like 95. Just insurmountable odds that the Royals overcame to beat them. So the Mets are right on the cusp of winning those games that they blew. That's what they did. They blew those games 100%. So to take away, you can't diminish what Daniel Murphy did, and you have to realize that we were that close. We have to re-sign players. We need bats. You need better defensive players. You need a catcher who could throw to second base. And you probably need to keep. I would say keep all 5 of the pitchers if you could, but if you can get a legitimate bat, at least keep 4. Keep Matz, he's a lefty. Harvey, I think, is the one who's, with 1 foot at the door already. You got to keep Syndergaard. He's a good team guy, throwing at heads, saying, things to jack you up in the media about, I'm 60 feet, 6 inches away. He's a guy you want to keep around. DeGrom put the team on his back the whole entire season. He was an all-star. So we got to see what Wheeler brings. And I think, people say Matt's going to be the best out of all of them. Matt's had a, pretty good performance in the playoffs, too, in the World Series. So I don't want to start trading away those players. I'm saying it's like I'm a Mets fan. But it's going to be a very interesting offseason, so I don't think you could slot them in as the favorites in the NL East, let alone the NL, because you have to deal with the Dodgers, the Cubs, the Cardinals, the Pirates, just so many teams going around there. So it's going to be a tough offseason for the Mets. But hopefully Sandy and the Wilpons realize that, hey, we were on the doorstep. We almost had a parade in the Canyon of Heroes. Let's open the checkbook this one time because we have the arms. So that's my plea. As a non-Met fan, that's my plea to the front office of the Mets. The Yankees, not really much to go around. There's a couple guys they should look at in the offseason. Will they throw big money at Greinke or Price? Probably. Will they get either one? Probably not. But we'll see. That's for another time and place. What other teams are going on right now? The Rangers have 8 wins. Rangers have off to one of the best starts in their history. Henrik Lundqvist, I think, is playing his best hockey in the history of his career, which is saying something. He's 31? Have not missed a game yet. Actually, saw him live in person once versus the Coyotes. The big difference between this year and last year is just secondary scoring. That and a legitimate replacement on the defensive end with Dylan McIlrath, who was a first-round pick a couple years back, to replace Boyle, who's more of an offensive defenseman. You have a guy who can clear the crease, big body, uses the body, unlike a guy like Mark Stahl. I'm not going to get in Mark Stahl's case. Mark Stahl's a big body defenseman, does not use the body, but he's more of a uses a stick, uses his reach. I have no problem with that. McIlrath has a bit of a mean streak to him, which is it's necessary and you need it. So he looked good. He played his first game, I believe his first game versus the Capitals a couple days back, and he was a big win versus the Capitals. They have 2 games in a row, 2 or 3 games in a row versus the West. should win versus the Avalanche, I believe, and then you have the Coyotes and a couple others coming up. So they a lot of talk early on. The Predators one loss as now, and the Canadians were on a hot streak. They were undefeated for a while, but the Rangers kind of fly under the radar, which I'm fine with because last year they were the number one seed. They won the President's Trophy, and look what happened. So I don't have to deal with that, and I'm totally fine with them not being the number one seed. Hockey is the one sport where, you're going to a playoff matchup, and it's like literally 50-50. In the NFL, I would say it's close because it's any given Sunday mentality. But let's face it, if the Pats are playing the Jaguars, something along the lines of that, you can kind of guess the outcome. Hockey is the one thing where you get a couple of bounces going the other way, and you lose the game. Goalie gets hot, you lose it. And it's frustrating as much as it's exciting. So that's just the one sport that I think is clearly 50-50. Basketball is not even close. Basketball, the better team always wins. There's very little parity. In baseball, I mean, same thing. I think you put a better team in a series. The 1 game thing, not counting that, but a 5-game series, 7-game series. I think usually at least 3/4 of the time, the better team usually wins. As I was saying with the Rangers, McElrath, the defensive side, I think it's a great improvement on the. And we still have guys like Brady Shea, too, so plenty of guys in the wings. The biggest thing, I think, the difference from last year is, like I said, with secondary scoring, having Zuccarello back, it's just the world's difference. Missing a game in the playoffs like we did with his scary injury, not being able to speak for a couple of days. You see how much we miss him. He's been phenomenal. You have a guy like Oscar Lindbergh coming up, a rookie right now. McDavid gets hurt. I know there's still my guy Jack Eichel from BU, but Oscar Lindbergh, our leading goalies in scoring, I believe he has 7 goals now. You're going to have your Rick Nash, you're going to have your Chris Kreider, you're going to have your Zuccarello, like I said, you're going to have Brassard, you're going to have Stepan. Those are the guys you normally relied on. Those are the guys we relied on last year. We had Marty St. Louis too, but he was a ghost of himself. Now you had a legitimate third-line player, Oscar Lindbergh, who's scoring with the best of them. I mean, that's a game changer. You could roll out 3 lines, and you have legitimate scores in all 3. It's just very hard to defend. And our 4th line is pretty good, too, with a guy like Jared Stoll, who we signed, Dominic Moore, who is a fan favorite, does everything right on the ice. It's a really fun team to watch, and it's a really fun team to like. We never did a show where I picked my Stanley Cup predictions. I believe last year I had Rangers Blackhawks, got that half right. It's a couple of games into the season already, 10, 12 games. But I would say early on it was Rangers. I'm not going to pick against them. There's no reason to pick against them. You could say what you want about Montreal. I don't think Montreal has the offensive scoring ability that we have. And I think on the defensive side, it's not even close. I mean, yeah, they have PK Subban, but we could shut teams down. They don't have a Stahl, a McDonough, a Girardi. They don't. Kevin Kline, who's been great, another guy we missed too. So I don't think it's close. And the West, they got to do a slow start. I like the Ducks a lot. They were a popular pick amongst the experts, air quotes. But I like they have so much offensive firepower, so I like them a lot in the West. You got to figure the Chicago Blackhawks going to suffer with the whole issues with Patrick Kane, Duncan Keith with his injury. Lost out on Brandon Saad. They had to trade him away to Columbus. A lot of their young players, Patrick Sharp, goes down to Dallas, so they lost a bit of their offensive scoring. So I thought the Ducks were the one team that I thought was strong enough in every position and had just the scoring that you'd be afraid of in the playoffs. So those would be my picks. Hopefully I don't jinx the Rangers again, but, it's just a different team. And you could say every single year going into those teams different, this team is different, but I feel like we never really had the secondary scoring that this team has, and you can rely on more guys. I didn't even mention Kevin Hayes, another guy you can rely on who just every game seems to get better and better and does everything right, is on the ice exactly where we want him to be. And the team was built the right way, and they still have guys in the wings, top prospects who can come up and fill in. It's a really, really good time for the Rangers, and Henrik Lundqvist is our best player and has been our best player, showing no signs of slowing down. So there's people saying the window is closing. The window is wide freaking open. I'm telling you, it's open, and the wind is blowing right through it. Huge window. We're going to be there late in the season. Alain Vigneault is an awesome coach. He goes and calls out Yoenis Cespedes for not with the. I mean, he probably was hurt too. On the at bat or he fouled it off his knee, and he says that it wasn't a tough guy, and I mean you gotta love stuff like that. Mets fans probably don't, but as a competitor or an athlete who wants to be the best and always be in the game, you gotta love what AV says there. So he's a great coach, a guy you could always root for. So love the Rangers. I'll give some love to the Islanders too. I believe they have 7 wins, and they're gonna be right there too in the Metro. Do I think they go as deep as the Rangers? No. They have a premier player in the game. They have a top 5 player in the game, John Tavares. They have some good, nice young players. They have, a core that's you could be excited about. I just don't think they have enough or the it factor to push them to the next level, and that's the reason why I think, there's a couple of teams. The Capitals maybe a little bit better. The Penguins added, Phil Kessel maybe a little bit better. Montreal, I would say, thanks to Carey Price and company, is a little bit better. Max Pacioretty's having a great season for them. So, if Tavares could win a Hart, put the team on his back, and let guys like Okposo and the rest of them there, the secondary scoring, could it be enough? Sure. I think goaltending is an issue. I'm not sure if their defensive unit is good enough to just shut teams out when they need to, like some of the teams in the East actually can. So that's one thing to be afraid of, but they're a playoff team. They're a lock for the playoffs. They're, without a doubt, making the playoffs. They could win a series, I think, too. They could upset somebody. When you have a player like that who plays, actually, today's game you see more players than the past playing both ends guys. Look at the best players in most teams. Rick Nash kills penalties, the Rangers. Ovechkin loves to check. He gets, he skates hard. Sidney Crosby does everything right. So the guys, especially in the East, do everything the right way. Tavares is maybe not on that level, but he does most things right. So it's all up to him. It's up to how good the goaltending is, and I could see them upsetting teams. I mean, again, it's very early on, but do I have them at the elite level at the East? I don't, but we'll see. So that's the quick NHL update for the New York teams. Devils, I'm sorry for Devils fans who listen to this. Obviously, you guys are they're not that good, but the bright side is you could be in the running for Austin Matthews in the first pick. So you have to just tank like the Sixers do. Speaking of Sixers, talk a little Knicks. The one thing I wanted to get into with the Knicks was at the beginning of the season was the 31.5 win total for the over-under. That's what Vegas put out. I think it was like Westgate, the sports book there. 31.5 is a very tough number because I felt it was like a high 20. I would fly to Vegas right now and throw put the house on it. Maybe even 30. But the extra 1.5, it's funny how a little, a point and a half changed a lot. And I still went with the over. I think that you could double their win total. They had 17 last year for your math majors. 17 plus 17 would be 34. I think we can win around 34 games. It's a different team. It's the one thing I noticed was everyone saying Langston Galloway's been so good this year, and as opposed to maybe last year. I mean, last year was fine, but no one was making the big deal. Everyone's calling him a D-League player, and which is kind of condescending. The one thing is, though, he was playing with other D-League players last year on the roster. Now he's playing with other NBA talent where he's not relied upon. Langston Galloway was arguably the guy you relied upon and expected the most of on the court. Now he's your 4th or 5th option, which is exactly what he should be, and he's been showing up. Him and Jerry Grant have been much better than Sasa Vujacic and Jose Calderon. Why Fisher still plays those two guys and starts them, I do not know. Grant's looked good in every game. Galloway's looked good in every game. Melo's looked good in one game, and he's been typical Carmelo Anthony in other games, and I'm a big proponent of Carmelo Anthony. I will defend him tooth and nail. He chose to come here. He wants to win here. He could have left. He didn't have to leave Denver. He could have bolted for Chicago, and he's here. So I always, if you want to win here, I'm going to like you. I'm going to root for you. I still think he's an elite scorer. He showed in that one game, versus Washington, who people have very high in the East, what he could do, and he still has it. I think once he gets more, once he gels more with the guys on the court, now he'll be fine. So, and the one, and I haven't even said his name yet. The most important part of this Knicks team is Kristaps Porzingis, a guy who I did not boo, was not upset about when the Knicks drafted him. Every GM, every team liked Kristaps Porzingis. Every team, the Lakers at 2 were thinking about drafting him. The reason why the Lakers did not go for a big was because they thought they can get LaMarcus Aldridge. They took D'Angelo Russell, who was underwhelmed. they were looking into Kristaps Porzingis. Everyone loved this kid, and he's 19 years old, or whatever, 19, 20 years old, 7'3". Yeah, he's put on some weight since he was drafted, like 15 pounds. So that's what they say. And he's just doing everything on the court. He's just catching the ball, a quick leans back into you, a quick spin, like fadeaways, hitting those mid-range jump shots. His 3-point looks so smooth. He's the aggressiveness he has, and that's the one knock on European players. Say why won't he be good? There's no aggression, lack of aggression. He has an edge to him. The putbacks on LaMarcus Aldridge just stormed the league. Everyone loves seeing that. He did it again the other night versus the Cavs on Kevin Love. He plays an edge. He has no flaws in his game. He can inside, outside. He could do it. He's getting a ton of boards. Had a double versus the Spurs. And Knicks they looked competitive in that game. They looked competitive in the Cavs. They should have won that game. Let's just be frank about that. They should have won. They blew it. But that's what happens when you're playing the best team in the East, even without J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert, Kyrie Irving. And the Cavs will run away with the East, and they will be my pick. The West, I'm not really sure yet. I'm floating between a bunch of teams. I liked the Spurs originally. Then I kind of, this is all preseason. I like the Spurs, and they got, I thought Kawhi Leonard would have a monster year. I thought the team would rely more on Aldridge and Leonard than they would with, Parker, Ginobili, and Duncan. But then you think that, the Warriors, why am I disrespecting the Warriors? They have a great team. And then I thought, well, the Clippers signed, their bench is stacked now. So I thought the Clippers, I would say, the Warriors are now looking they're looking great. They're undefeated. They just beat the Clippers. The Clippers were my pick. I think I said on Sirius that I said that it was the Cavs Clippers a couple weekends ago. So I'll stick with that. If you want, I'll put on the tape right now. I'll do Cavs Clippers. Yeah, they were close last year, so we'll see. But anyway, the Knicks. I'm very happy with the Knicks. The Nets. I'm not even we're talking about no wins. Playing the Lakers tonight, could lose that game. Lakers also have no wins. I kind of saw this coming. Their win total, their over under was like upper 20s, like 27, 28, around there. The writing was on the wall for them. They're going to be this bad. They have no, they re-signed Thaddeus Young, who's a nice player, but no Deron Williams. Not that it's it might be addition by subtraction, but Brook Lopez, Joe Johnson, who's disappears, is not going to lead a team. It's rough for the Nets. They're in basketball purgatory right now. Not a lot of picks, not a lot of cap room, not much really to do, not really a destination for free agents. It's tough. But the Knicks, the future's bright. The signings look pretty good. Derek Williams, the other Lopez, the better Lopez, Robin Lopez, is he's been good. Kyle O'Quinn, player everyone seems to like. Media loves him. They have hustle. They have grit. They have all those. They're trying. They're and that's the effort is there, and it goes a long way in the NBA. And we'll see. Might even improve even more with Aaron Aflalo if he has anything left in the tank. He's been hurt. Should be coming back soon. So I think the Knicks will double their win total and be around a 33-35 wins this season. Playoffs, not really sure. I think the East actually is better than most people give it credit for. But I don't really care about the playoffs. I wanted to see how good Porzingis is. I want to see Melo in a full season healthy, and we'll take it from there because, with the cap going up and all the free agents, it's going to be crazy. So we'll just have to hold out and just suffer through this one more year of, no playoffs. And I think from then on, basketball in New York, especially for Knicks fans, could be pretty good. Last sport of the day, we got the NFL. Jets versus Jags, Giants versus Bucks. On paper, you think both New York teams should win. The Giants' defense has been pretty brutal. I think they should. The Giants' defense has been bad, but they have scored a defensive touchdown. They play without Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, who's been phenomenal for them. They've played without Jason Pierre-Paul the whole year. Obviously, I'm not going to get into that whole thing, but he could be back. The guy doesn't know how to rush the quarterback, so anyone who's doing that will help. That's do I trust Jameis, a first-year quarterback, going to torch the Giants' defense the same way Drew Brees did? No, he's not Drew Brees. He's not going to go score for score with Eli Manning. Eli Manning's having his best season as a Giant, as a pro. Cruz is not back yet. No, don't know what's up with him. I don't think it's a calf. Who's had a strained calf out for 10 weeks in the NFL? I think it has to linger. It's some lingering effect with his knee, which is fine. But just come out and say it. He had a devastating knee injury. He tore his patellar tendon. Just say it. You want more rest. So he'll probably come back after the bye which is like November 29th that weekend. I mean, the Giants should win this game, like I said. I think it'll be close because it just all the dumb mistakes they had. I tweeted about this a lot. I've never seen a team with 3 losses that were like the most horrible losses in NFL history, all on by one team, all in one season. And the Giants did that with the Saints game, the Cowboys game, and the Falcons game. It's disaster. And the funny thing is, they're still in first place because of the injuries to Dallas, the Eagles mess, the confusion of not, the Chip Kelly offense not working, Sam Bradford not being very good, DeMarco Murray being non-existent, so that, and Washington just not having lack of talent, not realizing that Kirk Cousins is not a good quarterback. So because of the awfulness of the NFC East, the Giants are still in first place. Hopefully, the bright spots of their games, like their offense, their passing offense, comes out and they win this game versus the Bucs. And I think they should. I think they could, but will is another question. But I will go on the record as saying the Giants should win this game, and it is a turning point for them this season. If they lose this game, it's over. You can't lose to the Bucs, and you can't lose the way you did to the Saints and come back from that. The Cowboys, sooner or later, will get Dez and we'll get Tony Romo back, and that's going to be hard. That's all I'm saying. Jets, Jags, Fitzpatrick's going to play with the banged-up thumb. Jaguars aren't very good, but people are saying Bortles got better. Save it. I don't really care. Blake Bortles, no one's afraid of Blake Bortles. Jets defense is one of the best in the NFL. Cromartie was pissed off at his performance last week. Reeva said stuff. David Harris said stuff, lack of tackling. Muhammad Wilkerson, name it. Got on the line. They all were upset. I think a team coming in pissed off will definitely, they'll have something to prove. The Jets. Fitzpatrick being back makes the world's difference because Geno Smith is not an NFL quarterback. He should not be on an NFL roster. I respect Fitzpatrick for being a tough guy and playing when he knows the season for the Jets also is on the line because you have to compete in the wild card when you got blown out by the Raiders who have your spot now. So, big game for the Jets. They need to win. I don't think it'll be a typical trap game just because they came off of a loss and they're looking for blood, and that's always a good thing. So I'm trusting the Jets this week. I think the Jets could actually win big, like 3+ scores, something like that. Giants, not as much. Giants, like 1 score, barely. So I hope just limit the mistakes, get back to the old defense the way it was, and then you got to win this game, and then a quick turnaround. You're playing Thursday night versus the Bills, too. So it's a big stretch for the Jets season that they got to win this game, win a divisional game, and, win versus the Jags, distance themselves amongst the other wild card teams. Maybe, the Raiders are playing the Steelers this week, I believe. That's a tough matchup for them. They lose, they gain some ground back. So it's definitely a big week for the Jets. But I like the direction they're going in with these next 2 weeks. I like that Fitzpatrick's back. I've said before on podcasts that Brandon Marshall has been one of the best signings in Jets history. Might be a little bit premature, but he was good, the first couple weeks. Eric Decker, obviously, year 2 is always good. So we'll see. Just, keep the ball. Chris Ivory, ground and pound. They'll be fine. Giants, stop running the ball completely. Patriots run the ball 5 times a game. Why can't the Giants run the ball 5 times a game and let Eli throw 40-plus times? You have Odell Beckham, who's arguably the best receiver in the NFL, because no one in the NFL, maybe besides Julio Jones, but guys like Antonio Brown, Demaryius Thomas, no stars have really been spectacular this year. So use Beckham like you did last week, 3 touchdowns. Use him up. Giants don't throw to tight end. So Randall's been underwhelming. Dwayne Harris has been a nice surprise. So use Beckham. I'm not going to go all over the place here, but I'm just thinking at different points. But these are all the keys to these New York teams. So they listen to my crappy podcast. Tom Coughlin and Todd Bowles, you'll get some insight on what to do. So anyway, I'm hoping these teams win. They're both must-wins. Every game in the NFL is a must-win, but these are big weeks for both New York teams. So that's my little New York sports update, wrap-up, whatever you want to call it. Hopefully next week or in the coming weeks, I'll have another co-host so we could a little bit more banter than me just going on the line, my little rundown over here. But as always, thank you to those who listen to Edition and Swishing Podcast and read the site. Edition and Swishing Podcast, editionandswishing.com. You can follow me at Edward L. Murphy on Twitter. You can follow the podcast at DNS_podcast. Not entirely sure when this will be up because it's a Friday night, but maybe tomorrow. So I will send it out now and hopefully it'll be up. But again, thanks to all of you guys and your support. Tweet at me any questions you want me to answer for next week, like a mailbag of sorts. So I'll get to that. And I don't know, hopefully I'll see you soon.